parked it in front of the washer and dryer.
What?
Your bike.
Oh, I was going to ride to work and I was running late.
Whose fault is it? Not mine.
Yours.
It is not.
You took too long getting up.
I was up way before you. I had done a 30-minute yoga routine before you ever stirred. So don't you give me that.
But then you disappeared into the bedroom for a while. Like well, it was nice that you were using this, but now that we're done with evening prayer, you're never going to use it again.
That's not true. I've used it in the car before.
Oh.
I have. They're particularly bad in the summer. Sit up or something. Hit. Hit. Hit.
I am wearing
Hit.
my hat. It's my new hat.
Hit.
Hey, Denise.
Hit.
The bunnies! There he is.
Hello, bunnies.
Whoops.
Oh, too far. Oh, there he is. All Grandma Lefevre is thinking about is
There's
kill the bunny.
There's the bunny.
Hello, bunny. There's a little bunny on our sidewalk. Hello, bunny.
Look at that bunny.
Oh, he's wondering.
There's two. The other one is under the van.
They're talking about me.
They're talking. Yeah, he knows. Look at that bunny. Oh,
Gone now.
he's gone. Sorry. Oh! Nature.
Oh, except that you can't see him.
Oh, get it.
This is
Sorry.
awkward.
I know I'm
This
making
is
it worse.
awkward. No, this is not working. There he is. Hello, bunny.
Oh,
There they go. Oh, I wonder if they're friends.
they look like friends.
I don't know if they're friends.
I think there might be more than friends. And they're gonna make little bunnies. It's like a Disney movie out here. There's a robin over there. All right,
Just
that's
wanted
enough.
to share our bunnies with you.
There's our bunnies. Oh, there's us. Oh, they're still out there. He's gonna cross the street. We didn't get run over. Oh, the bunnies. Good evening, good evening. It's good to be with you this evening for evening prayer. And tonight is, hey, we haven't started evening prayer yet.
I was just getting you ready.
This is our last night doing evening prayer. Because tomorrow is the day of reckoning.
Oh.
So Melissa goes in for her tonsils tomorrow and her adenoids. What's the other thing I keep forgetting?
Turbinate reduction.
Her turbinado.
Turbinado. Turbinado. That's a type of sugar.
Her turbinado sugar reduction. So she's going in from tomorrow to get that done. And
Fun times.
yeah, but I think it'll be a good thing ultimately.
He's really, really excited about me not having tonsils anymore. They're really gross. Except not right now. They're looking the best that they've looked in a long time.
She says that, and then she was like, "Let me see yours." And I went, and she said, "Where are yours?" And I said, "Yours are monstrous." Yeah, we're sad it's the last night too, but it'll be all right. I think it'll be good for evenings for us. It'll be good for evenings for other people, and yeah, we're a bit. It's bittersweet, I would say, is a good way to put this. So, what's what?
I'm not sure what the delay is.
Yeah, well, the delay's like 10
we
or
were
15
looking
seconds.
at bunny rabbits.
We were looking at bunny rabbits. It's not that long. That's like 2 minutes. It's like a 2-minute delay. That's not right.
Or is that what is a turbinate reduction?
Oh, that could be.
That is opening my nasal airways with like radio frequency.
Is that what they do? With
Something,
radio
no,
frequency?
some sort of like, it sounded like magic. Remember we looked it up and I read you the description?
Radio
and
frequencies?
It's some sort of
Where do they play
frequency or something. I don't know how it works. But my mom had to have major surgery to have this done, so this is a great improvement.
They play 104.3 into your nostrils? Oldies?
I never read it.
I don't know.
I don't remember, but it sounded like magic.
I don't know
when I read about it.
It is the deep magic. The deep magic of Narnia. And that's how they do it. Man, my glasses are smudged.
Yes, it is. It's radio frequency.
It is a radio frequency. Weird.
Yeah, I'm having a turbinate reduction. Because my mom and my brother and I have, constricted airways and have always had. My mom and my brother are worse. They cannot breathe, whether they are sleeping or waking. But it's supposed to help. So, be able to breathe.
I think that'll be good. Make yoga and, biking.
Yeah, but no, it does. It says radio frequencies in my nose, and it's
I wonder
supposed
how
to
they do
doesn't
that,
it sound like magic?
It reminds me, it's like they turn up, like the very beginning of Back to the Future, where he turns on that really loud speaker and then and blows himself away with it.
Yeah.
It's such a good scene.
That's probably what I don't
Michael
know.
J. Fox.
I don't care. I will not.
I don't really know what they mean by radio frequencies. I'm sure it's not that they just turn the radio on in your nose, because that's what I'm picturing. I'm picturing them put 89X on in your nose.
I don't know.
All right. Well,
I'm not a doctor.
Let's worship. Evening prayer. Holden. A good way to wrap this up with Holden evening prayer. One of our favorite liturgies. So, my dear brothers and sisters in Christ, let us worship our God. Jesus Christ, you are the light of the world.
The light no darkness can overcome.
Stay with us now, for it is evening. Let your light scatter the darkness.
And shine within your people here. You made this way too loud.
Joyous light of heavenly glory, loving glow. Made too loud?
Too high. Joyous light of
heavenly glory, loving glow of God's own face. You who sing creation's story, shine on every land and race. Now as evening falls around us, we will raise our songs to you. God of daybreak, God of shadows, come and light our hearts anew. In the stars that grace the darkness, in the blazing sun of dawn, in the light of peace and wisdom, we will hear your quiet song. Love that fills the night with wonder, love that warms the weary soul, love that bursts all chains asunder, set us free and make us whole.
You made the heavens
Dancing star of night, make us shine with gentle justice, let us each reflect your light. Mighty God of all creation, gentle Christ who lights our way, loving Spirit of salvation, lead us on to endless day. Like Joyce. Maybe you'll get Sirius for free. Maybe they'll put it. Maybe they'll install OnStar in your adenoids.
I don't have any adenoids anymore, even where they were. I don't know.
I like that. Sirius radio. Sirius, that's the satellite radio.
Yeah, I know that.
She said maybe to get that.
I know. I thought that was funny.
Oh yeah, I know. That's good.
Oh. Shh.
Our phone's ringing.
I know. I almost never bring it.
Ready?
Yes.
May God be with you all.
And also with you.
Let us sing our thanks to God.
It is right to give God thanks and praise.
Blessed are you, Creator of the universe. From old you have led your people by night and day. May the light of your Christ make our darkness bright. For your word and your presence are the light of our pathways, and you are the light and life of all creation. Amen. Let my prayer rise up like incense before you, the lifting up of my hands as an offering to you. O God, I call to you, come to me now. Oh, hear my voice when I cry to you. Let my prayer rise up like incense before you, the lifting up of my hands as an offering to you. Keep watch within me, God, deep in my heart. May the light of your love be burning bright. Let my prayer rise up like incense before you, the lifting up of my hands as an offering to you. All praise to the God of all, creator of life. All praise be to Christ and the Spirit of love. Let my prayer rise up like incense before you, the lifting up of my hands as an offering to you. Let our prayers come before you, O Lord, as incense, and may your presence surround and fill us so that in union with all creation you might sing your praise and your love in our lives.
Amen.
Oh boy. Big stacks.
Why do we never think about getting that out?
I don't know. It's just the treasury. It just exists there.
That's my treasury, and I want it.
Is today the 17th?
It is.
So it is. Our reading, dear friends, for this evening is from John chapter 16. About your joy turning into sorrow. This one's good.
This one has a good ending.
This is a fitting one for a lot of reasons.
Don't read the writing, though. No good.
That was the apology.
Yeah. It takes you half of the reading just to figure out what it is they're talking about.
It says, therefore.
Praying to the saints is what it's about, which is really a question for us. So.
Yeah, we'll skip that. So some of his disciples said to one another, "What is this that he says to us, a little while and you will not see me, and again in a little while and you will see me, and because I am going to the Father?" So they were saying, "What does he mean by a little while? We do not know what he's talking about." Jesus knew that they wanted to ask him.
Hey, we have the complete New Testament, and I often feel like I don't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, no kidding. Can you imagine not
having any of that extra context?
There's like a blessing in both. Like they could have asked him any question they wanted, but we have the full revelation of God. We see the Christ. We both see the Christ. The apostles saw the Christ. We see the Christ. But it's like different sides of a diamond that we're looking at. That's a good way to put it, I think. Jesus knew that they wanted to ask him, so he said to them, "Is this what you're asking yourselves? What I meant by saying, a little while and you will not see me, and again in a little while and you will see me? Truly, truly, I say to you, you will weep and lament, but the world will rejoice. You will be sorrowful, but your sorrow will turn to joy. When a woman is giving birth, she has sorrow because her hour has come. But when she has delivered the baby, she no longer remembers the anguish for joy that a human being has been born into the world. So also you have sorrow now, but I will see you again, and your hearts will rejoice, and no one will take your joy from you. In that day you will ask nothing of me. Truly, truly, I say to you, whatever you ask of the Father in my name, he will give it to you. Until now you have asked nothing in my name. Ask and you will receive, that your joy may be full. I have said these things to you in figures of speech. The hour is coming when I will no longer speak to you in figures of speech, but will tell you plainly about the Father. In that day you will ask in my name, and I do not say to you that I will ask the Father on your behalf. For the Father himself loves you, because you have loved me, and have believed that I came from God. I came from the Father, and have come into the world, and now I am leaving the world and going to the Father. It's chiasm. That is. His disciples said, now you are speaking plainly and not using figurative speech. Now we know that you know all things and do not need anyone to question you. This is why we believe that you came from God. Jesus answered them, do you now believe? Behold, the hour is coming, indeed it has come, when you will be scattered, each to his own home, and will leave me alone. Yet I am not alone, for the Father is with me. I have said these things to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation. But take heart, I have overcome the world. Wow. What a thing to say.
I really like that verse.
Oh, man, what a thing to say. Hi, Lorraine. In the world you will have tribulation, but take heart. I have overcome the world. You could sit and think about that until you die and not get to the depths of what he is saying right there. What a beautiful picture, too, of sorrow and what we're looking forward to. When a woman is giving birth, she has sorrow because her hour has come. Oh no, here he comes. And the pain that goes with it. The curse of Eve. But when she has delivered the baby, she no longer remembers the anguish for joy that a human being has been born into the world. I remember it was like a day after we had Elliot. Maybe even an hour after we had Elliot. You were like, I want to have another one.
That was a 49-hour labor,
and
too.
that took 49 hours, and it was horrible. Now, the woman does not remember her anguish for joy that a human being has been born. But the husband knows that pretty well.
No, you never knew it in the first place.
I just stood there and watched it. I'm not saying I experienced it. I saw the whole thing. And then I got to see you rejoice when they put him in your arms. And I cried. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying I understand what it feels like to give birth. But I am saying I saw the whole thing. And I didn't get to experience that push. Where are you, fly? But we're coming to that in this life. Where now we suffer and now we ache. And we look forward to the day when, like the delivery of a human being into the world, we are born anew. We are raised from the dead. And no one will take that joy from us, just as he tells the disciples here. Where there will be no more sorrow. The old order of things that will pass away. Because this Christ who is speaking to them now tells them, take heart, I have overcome the world. The world that's going to rejoice while you are suffering. The world that's going to rejoice because they think they've served God by killing Jesus. They're going to mourn. But you will have joy. The sermon for this weekend is going to be based on Jeremiah chapter 20. And that text from Jeremiah is a lament. And he says this here. I might have to borrow this text for this. Truly, truly, I say to you, you will leap and lament, but the world will rejoice. You will be sorrowful, but your sorrow will turn into joy. And Jeremiah weeps and laments. He's the weeping prophet. More horrible things happen to Job, or to Jeremiah. He's second maybe only to Job in things going wrong in his life.
It's a bit different, not really a comparison though.
Huh?
It's not as much of a comparison though.
I'm not saying it's a comparison.
Well, I meant Job was actually himself physically not touched.
He was eventually.
Yeah, but not
like persecuted?
Yeah, no, it was just kind of different.
I'm just saying that these are two men who lots of things went wrong.
Suffering.
That's besides the point whether they're similar things. They're not. But this is you wait till you hear this lament for Sunday from Jeremiah 20. It's brutal. And yet it is a cry of faith to question God in this way. Lord, why have you deceived me? Is the first line of the lament. What a thing to say to God. And yet here, Jesus, the same one whom Jeremiah was preaching and prophesying about, this same Jesus says, take heart, I have overcome the world. That's something to think about. The light shines in the darkness.
And the darkness has not overcome it.
I don't want people to think that I know what it's like to have a baby.
Nobody thinks that.
Okay, good.
We all know. You don't know anything.
See, here's the thing that women don't know, though. They don't know what it's
true.
like to be the husband.
That's true.
And stand there, incapable of doing anything.
Maybe that's why you weren't invited to the party for so many decades and centuries.
That could be. Yeah, Jeremiah talks about this. Anyway. An angel went from God to a town called Nazareth, to a woman whose name was Mary.
Oh my gosh, it's gonna be okay.
The angel said to her, rejoice, O highly favored, for God is with you. You shall bear a child, and his name shall be Jesus, the chosen one of God Most High. And Mary said, I am the servant of my God. I live to do your will.
You know the Magnificat is like one of the greatest parts of this
It's
whole
right
thing,
there.
and you're trying to kill a fly that's bothering no one but you.
You're right. I repent.
That's my favorite.
My soul proclaims your greatness, O God, and my spirit rejoices in you. You have looked with love on your servant here, and blessed me all my life through. Great and mighty are you, O Holy One, strong is your kindness evermore. How you favor the weak and lowly one, humbling the proud of heart. You have cast the mighty down from their thrones and have lifted the humble of heart. You have filled the hungry with wondrous things,
And left
the wealthy no part. Great and mighty are you, O Holy
faithful
One.
one,
Strong is your justice, strong your love. As you promised to Sarah and Abraham, kindness forevermore. My soul proclaims your greatness, O God, and my spirit rejoices in you. You have looked with love with your servant here,
and
and blessed me all my life through. I get distracted by the messages sometimes. I apologize. Let us pray.
God of mercy, hold us in love.
In peace, we pray to you.
God of mercy, hold us in love.
For peace and salvation, we pray to you.
God of mercy, hold us in love.
For peace between nations, for peace between peoples.
God of mercy, hold us in love.
For us who are gathered to worship and praise you.
God of mercy, hold us in love.
For all of your servants who live out your gospel.
God of mercy, hold us in love.
For all those who govern, let justice might guide them.
God of mercy, hold us in love.
For all those who labor in service to others.
God of mercy, hold us in love.
Grant weather that nourishes all of creation.
God of mercy, hold us in love.
Keep watch on our loved ones and keep us from danger.
God of mercy, hold us in love.
For all the beloved who rest in your mercy.
God of mercy, hold us in love.
Help us, comfort us all of our days.
Keep us, hold us, gracious God.
Good evening, Doris and Laura. We pray. Great and merciful God, source and ground of all goodness and life, give to your people the peace that passes all understanding, and the will to live your gospel of mercy and justice through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Lord, remember us in your kingdom and teach us to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever.
Amen.
Amen. Let us bless our God.
Praise and thanks to you.
May God Creator bless us and keep us. May Christ be ever light for our lives. May the Spirit of love be our guide and path for all of our days. Amen. All right. That concludes evening prayer. I'm a little bit sad. I do like doing this.
Yeah. It is good.
Yeah. And we really appreciate everybody joining us for this. This has been really a good thing for Melissa and I during the time of the pandemic. And I know from talking to most of you that this has been a blessing for you as well. So we're glad to be able to do this together with you. Thank you for doing this with us. Some of this stuff we will incorporate on Wednesday evening prayers or evening services when we start doing those. Because I want to do Holden with accompaniment. So it'll be fun. I'll teach it to the rest of the congregation. I'm going to need you guys to help me teach this to the rest of the congregation. We'll also do, we'll do other ones as well. We'll make use of all the parts of the hymnal that we don't usually use because we're usually in the divine settings. But there's so many good liturgies in there. There's evening prayer, there's comp line, prayer, service of prayer and preaching. There's another one in there too. Oh, we'll use the litany. If you have your hymnal in there, if you're looking for a good prayer to say before you go to bed tonight, pull out your hymnal and pray the litany with your family. It's such a good prayer. It seems long. I mean, it is long. But when you really start to think about the different elements of that prayer and the call and responses of it, oh gosh, it's such a good prayer. It's such a good prayer for us to be praying all the time. The litany is just a really wonderful thing. So there's a lot of good stuff in the hymnal that we'll make use of, and also Holden, which is not in the hymnal, but don't worry, we'll buy it. We'll do it at church because I'm looking forward to it. But again, thank you for doing this with us. And if you are going about your evening, Do not be afraid. Be at peace. And if you are sticking around, we got 2 chapters left of Dawn Treader. So we're going to crank through those right now and find out what happens at the end of the world. So, let us read the conclusion of the Voyage of the Dawn Treader by C.S. Lewis. Love you. What? Huh? Oh, she saved a mess for me. It's my mess. I made a pork chop. I made a pork chop for dinner. All right. Chapter 15. You're very welcome, everybody. That's I see a couple notes of thank you. You're very, very welcome. We were happy to do this, and we enjoyed it very much. So, here we go. Chapter 15, The Wonders of the Last Sea. Very soon they had left Ramandu's country, or very soon after they had left Ramandu's country, they began to feel that they had already sailed beyond the world. All was different. For one thing, they all found that they were needing less sleep. One did not want to go to bed, nor to eat much, nor even to talk except in low voices. Another thing was the light. There was too much of it. The sun, when it came up each morning, looked twice, if not 3 times its usual size. And every morning, which gave Lucy the strangest feeling of all, the huge white birds singing their song with human voices in a language no one knew streamed overhead and vanished astern on their way to their breakfast at Aslan's table. A little later, they came flying back and vanished into the east. There's something I like about this, like with the birds, and they're singing a language that's human, but nobody knows it. Denise, I'm not sure. Elders, we got to figure that out. But don't worry, we will communicate that with the congregation when Wednesday evening services will begin. And Carrie, you're welcome as well. I'm glad that you appreciated this too. And I was saying here, we read things in like in Revelation and maybe in Daniel and stuff. I'm gonna get you, Fly. I'm gonna get you. Here you go. Climb over that edge. I'm gonna get this Fly. There's all this weird stuff about like the 4 living creatures and there's all these wild looking angels and how many wings and all the eyes. And they're all very strange to consider. And that's what this reminds me of. Like, for some reason, there's birds that have human voices but speak in a language that people don't know. And they just do this weird thing that they do every day where they go and they eat Aslan's table and then they fly back. It's interesting. How beautifully clear the water is, said Lucy to herself as she leaned over the port side early in the afternoon the second day. And it was. The first thing that she noticed was a little black object about the size of a shoe, traveling along at the same speed as the ship. For a moment, she thought that it was something floating on the surface. But then there came floating past a bit of stale bread which the cook had thrown out of the galley. And the bit of bread looked as if it were going to collide with the black thing, but it didn't. It passed above it. And Lucy now saw that the black thing could not be on the surface. Then the black thing suddenly got very much bigger and flicked back to normal size a moment later. Now Lucy knew that she had seen something just like that happen somewhere else. If only she could remember where. She held her hand to her head and screwed up her face and put out her tongue in an effort to remember. And at last she did. Of course! It was like when you saw from a train on a bright sunny day. It was like what you saw from a train on a bright sunny day. You saw the black shadow of your own coach running along the fields at the same pace as the train. Then you went into a cutting, and immediately the same shadow flicked close up to you and got big, racing along the grass of the cutting bank. Then you came out of the cutting and flick! Once more the black shadow had gone back to its normal size and was running along the fields. It's our shadow, the shadow of the Dawn Treader, said Lucy. Our shadow running along the bottom of the sea. That time, when it got bigger, it went over a hill. That time when it got bigger, it went over a hill. But in that case, the water must be clearer than I thought. Good gracious! I must be seeing the bottom of the sea, fathoms and fathoms down. As soon as she had said this, she realized that the great silvery expanse which she had been seeing without noticing for some time was really the sand on the seabed, and that all sorts of darker or brighter patches were not lights and shadows on the surface, but real things on the bottom. At present, for instance, they were passing over a mass of soft purply green with a broad winding strip of pale gray in the middle of it. But now that she knew it was on the bottom, she saw it much better. She could see that bits of the dark stuff were much higher than the other bits and were waving gently. "Just like trees in the wind," said Lucy, "and I do believe that's what they are. It's a submarine forest." They passed on above it, and presently the pale streak was joined by another pale streak. "If I was down there," thought Lucy, "that streak would be just like a road through the wood. And that place where it joins the others would be a crossroads. Oh, I do wish I was. Hello, the forest is coming to an end, and I do believe the streak really was a road. I can still see it going across the open sand. It's a different color, and it's marked out with something at the edges, dotted lines. Perhaps they are stones, and now they're getting wider." But it was not really getting wider, it was getting nearer. She realized this because of the way in which the shadow of the ship came rushing up toward her, and the road, she felt sure it was a road now, began to go in zigzags. Obviously, it was climbing up a steep hill, and when she held her head sideways and looked back, what she saw was very like what you see when you look down a winding road from the top of a hill. She could see the shafts of sunlight falling through the deep water onto the wooded valley, and in the extreme distance, everything melting away into a dim greenness. But some places, the sunny ones, she thought, were ultramarine blue. She could not, however, spend much time looking back. What was coming into view in the forward direction was too exciting. The road had apparently now reached the top of the hill and ran straight forward. Little specks were moving to and fro on it. And now something most wonderful, fortunately in full sunlight, or as full as it can be when it falls through fathoms of water, flashed into sight. It was knobbly and jagged and of a pearly, or perhaps an ivory, color. She was so nearly straight above it that at first she could hardly make out what it was. But everything became plain when she noticed its shadow. The sunlight was falling across Lucy's shoulders, so that the shadow of the thing lay stretched out in the sand behind it. And by its shape she saw clearly that it was a shadow of towers and pinnacles, minarets and domes. "Why, it's a city or a huge castle," said Lucy to herself. "But I wonder why they built it on the top of a high mountain." Long afterward, when she was back in England and talked all these adventures over with Edmund, they thought of a reason, and I am pretty sure it is a true one. It is the true one. In the sea, the deeper you go, the darker and colder it gets. And it is down there in the dark and cold that dangerous things live, the squid and the sea serpent and the kraken. The valleys are the wild, unfriendly places. The sea people feel about their valleys as we do about the mountains, and feel about their mountains as we do about the valleys. It is on the heights, or as we would say in the shallows, that there is warmth and peace. The reckless hunters and brave knights of the sea go down into the depths on quests and adventures, but return home to the heights for rest and peace. Courtesy and counsel, the sports, the dances, and the songs. They had passed the city, and the seabed was still rising. It was only a few 100 feet below the ship now. The road had disappeared. They were sailing above an open park-like country dotted with little groves of brightly colored vegetation. And then, Lucy nearly squealed aloud with excitement, she had seen people. I like this idea that there's this, in Narnia, there's this whole other underwater world that nobody's ever had contact with because they're underwater. But they're having their adventures too. They go out into the depths, and then they return to the heights where there's safety and warmth. Like the opposite of us. But nobody's, Caspian's never met them. Lucy and the Pevensies have never met them. No one in Narnia has ever seen these castles, nor have the castles ever been to Narnia. There's a whole other basket of stories in there that C.S. Lewis is just kind of letting float underneath the water. There's something neat about that. There were between 15 and 20 of them, and all mounted on seahorses. Not the tiny little seahorses, which you may have seen in museums, but horses rather bigger than themselves. They must be noble and lordly people, Lucy thought, for she could catch the gleam of gold on some of their foreheads, and streamers of emerald or orange-colored stuff fluttered from their shoulders in the current. Then, "Oh, bother these fish," said Lucy, for a whole shoal of small fat fish, swimming quite close to the surface, had come between her and the sea people. But though this spoiled her view, it led to the most interesting thing of all. Suddenly, a fierce little fish of a kind she had never seen before came darting up from below, snapped, grabbed, and sank rapidly with one of the fat fish in its mouth. And all the sea people were sitting on their horses staring up at what had happened. They seemed to be talking and laughing. And before the hunting fish had got back to them with its prey, another of the same kind came up from the sea people. And Lucy was almost certain that one big seaman who sat on his seahorse in the middle of the party had sent it or released it, as if he had been holding it back till then in his hand or on his wrist. "Why, I do declare," said Lucy, "it's a hunting party, or more like a hawking party." "Yes, that's it. They ride out with these little fierce fish on their wrists, just as we used to ride out with falcons on our wrists when we were kings and queens at Cair Paravel long ago. And then they fly them, or I suppose I should say they swim them, at the others. How?" She stopped suddenly because the scene was changing. The sea people had noticed the dawn treader. The shoal of fish had scattered in every direction. The people themselves were coming up to find out the meaning of this big black thing which had come between them and the sun. And now they were so close to the surface that if they had been in air instead of water, Lucy could have spoken to them. They were men and women both. All wore coronets of some kind, and many had chains of pearls. They wore no other clothes. Their bodies were the color of old ivory, their hair dark purple. The king at the center, no one could mistake him for anything but the king, looked proudly and fiercely into Lucy's face and shook a spear in his hand. His knights did the same. The faces of the ladies were filled with astonishment. Lucy felt sure that they had never seen a ship or a human before. And how should they in seas beyond the world's end, where no ship ever came? There they are. There's the sea people. "What are you staring at, Lou?" said a voice close beside her. Lucy had been so absorbed in what she was seeing that she started at the sound, and when she turned, she found that her arm had gone dead from leaning on the rail so long in one position. Drinian and Edmund were standing beside her. "Look," she said. They both looked, but almost at once Drinian said in a low voice, "Turn around at once, your majesties. That's right, with your backs to the sea. And don't look as if we were talking about anything important." "Why, what's the matter?" said Lucy as she obeyed. "It'll never do for the sailors to see all that," said Drinian. "We'll have men falling in love with a sea woman, or falling in love with the undersea country itself and jumping overboard. I've heard of that kind of thing happening before in strange seas. It's always unlucky to see these people." "But we used to know them," said Lucy. "In the old days at Cair Paravel, when my brother Peter was High King, they came to the surface and sang at our coronation." I think that must have been a different kind, Lou," said Edmund. "They could live in the air as well as under water. I rather think these can't. By the look of them, they'd have surfaced and started attacking us long ago if they could. They seem very fierce." "At any rate," said Drinian, but at that moment 2 sounds were heard. One was a plop, the other was the sound of the fighting top shouting, "Man overboard!" Then everyone was busy. Some of the sailors hurried aloft to take in the sail, others hurried below to get out the oars, and Rince, who was on duty in the poop, began to put the helm hard over so as to come round and back to the man who had gone overboard. But by now everyone knew that it wasn't strictly a man. It was Reepicheep. "Drat that mouse," said Drinian. "It's more trouble than all the rest of the ship's company put together. If there is any scrape to be got into it, it will get it. It will get. I ought to be put in irons, keel-hauled, marooned, have his whiskers cut off. It ought to be put in irons. Can anyone see that little blighter?" All this didn't mean that Drinian didn't really dislike Reepicheep. On the contrary, he liked him very much, and was therefore frightened about him, and being frightened put him in a bad temper. Just as your mother is much angrier with you for running out into the road in front of a car than a stranger would be. No one, of course, was afraid of Reepicheep's drowning, for he was an excellent swimmer. But the three who knew what was going on below the water were afraid of those long, cruel spears in the hands of the sea people. In a few minutes the dawn treader had come round, and everyone could see the black blob in the water which was Reepicheep. He was chattering with the greatest excitement, but as his mouth kept getting filled with water, Nobody could understand what he was saying. "He'll blurt the whole thing out if we don't shut him up," cried Drinian. To prevent this, he rushed to the side and lowered a rope himself, shouting to the sailors. All right, back to your places. I hope I can heave a mouse up without help." And as Reepicheep began climbing up the rope, not very nimbly because his wet fur made him heavy, Drinian leaned over and whispered to him, "Don't tell, not a word." But when the dripping mouse had reached the deck, it turned out not to be at all interested in the sea people. "Sweet," he cheeped. Sweet. What are you talking about?" asked Drinian crossly. "And you needn't shake yourself all over me either." "I tell you the water's sweet," said the mouse. "Sweet, fresh. It isn't salt." For a moment, no one quite took in the importance of this. But then Reepicheep once more repeated an old prophecy. "Where the waves grow sweet, don't doubt, Reepicheep. There is the utter east." Then at last everyone understood. "Let me have a bucket, Rhinouf," said Drinian. It was handed him, and he lowered it, and up it came again. The water shone in it like glass. "Perhaps your Majesty would like to taste it first," said Drinian to Caspian. The king took the bucket in both hands, raised it to his lips, sipped, then drank deeply and raised his head. His face was changed. Not only his eyes, but everything about him seemed to be brighter. "Yes," he said, "it is sweet. That's real water, that. I'm not sure that it isn't going to kill me, but it is the death I would have chosen if I'd known about it till now." "What do you mean?" asked Edmund. It's like more than anything else," said Caspian. "That is what it is," said Reepicheep. "Drinkable light. We must be very near the end of the world now." There was a moment's silence, and then Lucy knelt down on the deck and drank from the bucket. "It's the loveliest thing I have ever tasted," she said with a kind of gasp. "But oh, it's strong. We shan't need to eat anything now." There they are. There's Reepicheep drying himself off, Lucy taking a drink. And one by one, everybody on board drank, and for a long time they were all silent. They felt almost too well and strong to bear it, and presently they began to notice another result. As I have said before, there has been too much light ever since they left the island of Ramandu. The sun too large, though not too hot, the sea too bright, the air too shining. Now the light grew no less, if anything it increased. But they could bear it. They could look straight up at the sun without blinking. They could see more light than they had ever seen before, and the deck and the sail and their own faces and bodies became brighter, and every rope shone. And the next morning, when the sun rose, now 5 or 6 times its old size, they stared hard into it and could see the very feathers of the birds that came flying from it. Hardly a word was spoken on board all that day till about dinner time. No one wanted any dinner. The water was enough for them. When Drinian said, "I can't understand this. There is not a breath of wind. The sail hangs dead. The sea is as flat as a pond. And yet we drive on as fast as if there were a gale behind us." "I've been thinking that too," said Caspian. "We must be caught in some strong current." Said Edmund. "That's not so nice if the world really has an edge and we're getting near it." "You mean," said Caspian, "that we might be just, poured over it?" Yes, cried Reepicheep, clapping his paws together. "That's how I've always imagined it. The world like a great round table, and the edges of all the oceans endlessly pouring over the edge. The ship will tip up, stand on her head for one moment. We shall see over the edge, and then down the rush, the speed." "And what do you think will be waiting for us at the bottom, eh?" said Drinian. "Aslan's country, perhaps," said the mouse, its eyes shining. "Or perhaps there isn't any bottom. Perhaps it goes down forever and ever. But whatever it is, won't it be worth anything just to have looked for one moment beyond the edge of the world?" "But look here," said Eustace, "this is all rot. The world's round. I mean round like a ball, not like a table." "Our world is," said Edmund. "But is this?" "Do you mean to say," asked Caspian, "that you 3 come from a round world, round like a ball, and you've never told me? It's really too bad of you, because we have fairy tales in which there are round worlds, and I always loved them. I never believed there really were any, or I never believed there were any real ones. But I've always wished there were, and I've always longed to live in one. Oh, I'd give anything. I wonder why you can get into our world and we can never get into yours. If only I had the chance. It must be exciting to live on a thing like a ball. Have you ever been to parts where the people walk about upside down? Edmund shook his head. And it isn't like that, he added. There's nothing particularly exciting about a round world when you're there. Chapter 16. The very end of the world. Reepicheep was the only person on board besides Drinian and the two Pevensies who had noticed the sea people. He had dived in at once when he saw the Sea King shaking his spear, for he regarded this as a sort of threat or challenge, and wanted to have the matter out there and then. The excitement of discovering that the water was now fresh had distracted his attention, and before he remembered the sea people again, Lucy and Drinian had taken him aside and warned him not to mention what he had seen. As things turned out, they need hardly have bothered, for by this time the Dawn Treader was gliding over a part of the sea which seemed to be uninhabited. No one except Lucy saw anything more of the people, and even she had only one short glimpse. All morning on the following day they sailed in fairly shallow water, and the bottom was weedy. Just before midday, Lucy saw a large shoal of fishes grazing on the weed. They were all eating steadily and moving in the same direction. Just like a flock of sheep, thought Lucy. Suddenly she saw a little sea girl of about her own age in the middle of them, a quiet, lonely-looking girl with a sort of crook in her hand. Lucy felt sure that this girl must be a shepherdess, or perhaps a fisherdess, and that the shoal was really a flock at pasture. Both the fishes and the girl were quite close to the surface, and just as the girl, gliding in the shallow water, and Lucy, leaning over the bulwark, came opposite to one another, the girl looked up and stared straight into Lucy's face. Neither could speak at one another, and in a moment the sea girl dropped astern. But Lucy will never forget her face. It did not look frightened or angry like those of the other sea people. Lucy had liked that girl, and she felt certain that the girl had liked her. In that one moment they had somehow become friends. There did not seem to be much chance of their meeting again in that world or in any other. But if ever they do, they will rush together with their hands held out. Well, it's a sweet idea. After that, for many days, without wind in her shrouds or foam in her bows, across a waveless sea, the Dawn Treader glided smoothly east. Every day and every hour, the light became more brilliant, and still they could bear it. No one ate or slept, and no one wanted to. But they drew buckets of dazzling water from the sea, stronger than wine and somehow wetter, more liquid, more than ordinary. Oh! Hold on. Pause. I think I'm okay. Oh yeah, my computer's charging. My computer was gonna die. Sorry, here we go. No one ate or slept, and no one wanted to, but they drew buckets of dazzling water from the sea, stronger than wine, and somehow wetter, more liquid than ordinary water, and pledged one another silently in deep draughts of it. And one or two of the sailors, who had been oldish men when the voyage began, now grew younger every day. Everyone on board was filled with joy and excitement, but not an excitement that made one talk. The further they sailed, the less they spoke, and then almost in a whisper, the stillness of that last sea laid hold of them. "My lord," said Caspian to Drinian one day, "what do you see ahead?" "Sire," said Drinian, "I see whiteness. All along the horizon, from the north to the south, as far as my eyes can reach." "That is what I see too," said Caspian, "and I cannot imagine what it is." "If we were in higher latitudes, your majesty," said Drinian, "I would say it was ice. But it can't be that, not here. All the same, we'd better get men to oars and hold the ship back against the current. Whatever the stuff is, we don't want to crash into it at this speed." They did as Drinian said, and so continued to go slower and slower.
The whiteness did not get any less mysterious as they approached it. If it was land, it must be a very strange land, for it seemed just as smooth as the water and on the same level with it. When they got very close to it, Drinian put the helm hard over and turned the Dawn Treader south so that she was broadside on to the current, and rowed a little way southward along the edge of the whiteness. In doing so, they accidentally made an important discovery that the current was only about 40 feet wide, and the rest of the sea was still as a pond. This was good news for the crew, who had already begun to think that their journey to Ramandu's island, rowing against stream all the way, would be pretty poor sport. It also explained why the shepherdess girl had dropped so quickly astern. She was not in the current. If she had been, she would have been moving east at the same speed as the ship. And still no one could make out what the white stuff was. Then the boat was lowered and it put off to investigate. Those who remained on the Dawn Treader could see that the boat pushed right in amidst the whiteness. Then they could hear the voices of the party in the boat, clear across the still water, talking in a shrill and surprised way. Then there was a pause while Rheinalf in the bows of the boat took a sounding. And when, after that, the boat came rowing back, there seemed to be plenty of white stuff inside her. Everyone crowded to the side to hear the news. "Lilies, your majesty!" shouted Rheinalf, standing up in the bows. "What did you say?" asked Caspian. "Blooming lilies, your majesty," said Rheinalf. "Same as in a pool or in a garden at home." "Look," said Lucy, who was in the stern of the boat. She held up her wet arms full of white petals and broad, flat leaves. "What's the depth, Rheinalf?" asked Drinian. "That's the funny thing, Caspian," said Rheinalf. "That's the funny thing, Captain," said Rheinalf. "It's still deep, 3.5 fathoms clear." "They can't be real lilies, not what we call lilies," said Eustace. Probably they were not, but they were very like them. And when, after some consultation, the Dawn Treader turned back into the current and began to glide eastward through the Lily Lake or the Silver Sea, they tried both these names, but it was the Silver Sea that stuck, and is now on Caspian's map. The strangest part of their travels began. Very soon the open sea which they were leaving was only a thin rim of blue on the western horizon. Whiteness, shot with faintest color of gold, spread round them on every side, except just astern, where their passage had thrust the lilies apart and left an open lane of water that shone like dark green glass. To look at, this sea was very like the Arctic. And if their eyes had not by now grown as strong as eagles, the sun on all that whiteness, especially at the early morning. Oh, I gotta go get a charger. My computer's gonna die. Hold on. I got a charger. 1 second. Sorry. Am I still streaming? Hold on. Let me check. It looks like I am. Am I back? I am back! Oh! Praise the Lord! I was so afraid. Alright. Sorry. Let's get back to it. Hold on. Oh my gosh. That freaked me out. I thought we weren't going to make it through this. But everything connected right back together.
It looks like I am.
Awesome. All right, here we go. Oh, now my dad's texting me. Thanks, Dad.
Am I back?
The Lily Sea.
I am back.
The Silver Sea. Here we go.
Praise the Lord.
I was streaming. Where was I?
All right.
Oh,
sorry.
Eagles.
Let's get back to it.
There's...
Hold on.
And every evening, the same whiteness.
That freaked me out. I thought we weren't going to make it through this.
There seemed no end to the lily.
But everything connected right back together.
It looks like I am.
Awesome. All right, here we go.
there rose a smell which Lucy
now my
found
dad
very
texts
hard to
me.
describe.
Thanks, Dad.
Yes.
Am I back?
But not at all
The
sweet.
lilies.
I am
back.
Silver sea. Here we go.
Fresh,
Praise
wild,
the Lord.
I'm
I'm
still
streaming
streaming.
frail.
Where was
That
I?
seemed to get
All
into
right.
your brain.
Oh,
and
sorry.
make you feel
Let's
that
get back
you
to
could
it.
go up the mountains at a
There's,
run or wrestle with an
hold
elephant.
on.
And every
Oh,
evening, the
gosh.
same whiteness.
That freaked
made
me
the
out. I
daylight
thought we
last
weren't going to
longer.
make it through this.
There seemed no end to the
But
lilies.
everything connected
Day
right
after
back
day
together.
from
It
all
looks
those
like I am.
miles and
Awesome.
They took
Here we
surroundings.
go.
They took soundings very often.
Lucy
found very only several days
Thanks,
later
Dad.
that the water.
Am I back?
Not at all
The
sweet.
lilies. I am back.
After
Silver
that,
sea. Here we go.
went on
Praise
getting
the
shells.
Lord. I'm streaming
There
frail.
came a day when
All
you
right.
had to roll out of the
sorry.
beach. They feel their way
Let's get back
toward it,
to it.
go up the mountains,
Feel their
way
way
forward
forward.
at a snail's
Hold on.
And every
Oh,
evening,
my
the
gosh.
same whiteness.
That freaked me out. I thought we weren't going to make it through this.
There seemed no end to the
But
lilies.
everything connected
Day
right
after
back
day
together.
from
It
all
looks
those
like I am.
miles.
Awesome.
They took surroundings.
Here we go.
They took soundings very often.
Lucy
found very only several days
Thanks,
later
Dad.
that the water.
Am I back?
Not at all
The
sweet.
lilies. I am back.
After
Silver
that,
sea. Here we go.
went on
Praise
getting
the Lord.
shells.
I'm streaming frail.
Day when
All
you
right.
Let's
get back to it.
up the mountains.
Hold on.
And every
Oh,
evening,
my
the
gosh.
same whiteness.
That freaked me out.
Sorry, I figured it out. Let me back up a little bit. That should have fixed it. I was live streaming, or I had the YouTube going, and that was playing, and that's where the audio confusion was coming from. So I apologize. It was causing like a loopy. So hopefully that should be good. Oh, let me fix this too. There we go. We should be good now. I'll check and make sure. Here. Sorry about that. Bah! So many problems. Let me make sure that there's nothing else playing right now. I don't think there is. Oh, it's good now. Okay, great. Yeah, it should be good. Sorry about that. That was my mistake. I had opened the live stream to make sure I was still live streaming, and I forgot to turn it. I didn't pause it, so the audio from that was coming through. I'll back up a little bit because I didn't get very far. Here we go. There seemed no end to the lilies. Day after day, from all those miles and leagues of flowers, there rose a smell which Lucy found very hard to describe. Sweet, yes, but not at all sleepy or overpowering. A fresh, wild, lonely smell that seemed to get into your brain and make you feel that you could go up mountains at a run or wrestle with an elephant. She and Caspian said to one another, "I feel that I can't stand much more of this, yet I don't want it to stop." They took soundings very often, but it was only several days later that the water became shallower. After that, it went on getting shallower. There came a day when they had to row out of the current and feel their way forward at a snail's pace, rowing and soon it was clear that the Dawn Treader could sail no further east. Indeed, it was only by a very clever handling that they saved her from grounding. "Lower the boat," cried Caspian, "and then call the men aft. I must speak to them." "What's he going to do?" whispered Eustace to Edmund. "There's a queer look in his eyes." "I think we probably all look the same," said Edmund. They joined Caspian out on the poop, and soon all the men were crowded together at the foot of the ladder to hear the king's speech. "Friends," said Caspian, "we have now fulfilled the quest on which you embarked. The 7 lords are all accounted for, and as Sir Reepicheep has sworn never to return, when you reach Rimandu's land, you will doubtless find the lords Revilian and Argos and Mavramorn awake. To you, my lord Drinian, I entrust this ship, bidding you to sail to Narnia with all the speed you may, and above all not to land on the island of Deathwater. And instruct my regent, the dwarf Trumpkin, to give to all these my shipmates the rewards I promised them. They have been earned well. And if I come not again, it is my will that the regent and Master Cornelius and Truffle Hunter the Badger and Lord Drinian choose a king of Narnia with the consent." But sire," interrupted Drinian, "are you abdicating?" "I am going with Reepicheep to see the world's end," said Caspian. A low murmur of dismay ran through the sailors. "We will take the boat," said Caspian. "You will have no need of it in these gentle seas, and you must build a new one on Rimandu's island. And now—" "Caspian," said Edmund suddenly and sternly, "you can't do this." "Most certainly," said Reepicheep, "His Majesty cannot." No, indeed, said Drinian. Can't, said Caspian sharply, looking for a moment not unlike his Uncle Miraz. Begging your pardon, Majesty's pardon, said Rheinelf from the deck below, but if one of us did the same, it would be called deserting. You presume too much on your long service, Rheinelf, said Caspian. No, sire, he's perfectly right, said Drinian. By the mane of Aslan, said Caspian, I had thought you were all my subjects here, not my schoolmasters. I'm not, said Edmund, and I say you cannot do this. Can't again, said Caspian. What do you mean? If it please your majesty, we mean shall not, said Reepicheep with a very low bow. You are the king of Narnia. You break faith with all your subjects, and especially Trumpkin, if you do not return. You shall not please yourself with adventures as if you were a private person. And if your majesty will not hear reason, it will be the truest loyalty of every man on board to follow me in disarming and binding you till you come to your senses. This is something that he's getting at that's interesting too. Everyone thinks kings have all the power, right? For instance, he's King Caspian. He can do whatever he wants. No, he can't. He can't do whatever he wants because he's king. He has responsibilities. So this is something that's true of almost every vocation. So as a father, I can't do whatever I want. I'm not free to just do whatever. And you see where this goes completely wrong when like in families, when someone says something stupid, like they fell out of love with their spouse, something that doesn't really make sense in a way that isn't selfish, or somebody will like leave their family behind and go like be free or go do what they always dreamed or follow their passions, and no matter which way you slice it, it's always rank self-interest, and that's what Caspian's doing right here. I'm going with Reepicheep. No, you're the king. You have to stay, and you can't desert all the people who are whom you are beholden to. You don't just get to abdicate. And there's a lot of truth in this. We live in a culture that would tell Caspian to do it. Go be free, and they'd honor and revere him for his passion or whatever. Hold on, I'm going to turn the light on. Just getting a little dark in here. It's not a good thing. You're not just free to do whatever you want. You're responsible to people in your vocation. This is why, for example, it's bad form to just quit a job without giving 2 weeks notice or fulfilling your contract or whatever. What makes you a jerk if you just up and quit is you did not give any of your people who were relying on you and your work time to accommodate that loss that they're going to have to make up for. So that means finding somebody to replace you. That means making sure that deadlines are met, or that there's enough resources, or the skills that you were bringing to the table are met. Now, this doesn't mean that it's not okay ever to quit. Sometimes you are in a toxic work environment. But the general rule of thumb is you give notice. That's important out of respect for other people. You're not just free to do whatever you want. And to do whatever you want makes you a selfish jerk. That's what that is. And our country and our culture is rank with this ideology or this perspective. There's a good movie called Into the Wild. Actually, well, we didn't like the movie that much, but it's a good example of this, about Alexander Supertramp. And he's a rich kid, and he signs away everything that his parents had given him. So they gave him like a $25,000 check or something when he graduated college. He just donates it all to some charity, and he sells everything he has, and he leaves everything, and he just goes and wanders around the country until he winds up in Alaska. He never talks to his family. He just leaves. And And our culture treats him like he's a hero. But his family had no idea where he was. They weren't sure if he was dead. They weren't sure if something bad had happened to him. And what happens ultimately to this guy is he's an idiot and doesn't know how to survive, and he just dies in the wild. And it turns out he was less than a mile or something from a bridge, wherever he was out in Alaska. But it's like our culture treats this like it's this amazing thing, but it's not. It's just selfishness. It's not fair to the people that God has placed in your life for you to go do whatever you want. And that's what all the point that everybody's making here to Caspian. You're not going to the end of the world. You're going back because you're king. You have responsibilities, and there are people who are relying on you. Trumpkin, Truffle Hunter, and all the people of Narnia, all your subjects who love you and who need you to rule and reign good and fairly. You don't get to do whatever you want like it's a free-for-all. All right, sorry, that was a long little diatribe. Back to the book. Hopefully you're still on. Somebody leave a comment that you can still hear me. I see that Joyce did, but I'm anxious about it. I'm gonna wait for somebody to leave a comment or for my dad to text me that he can hear me okay. And then I'll finish up. Because we got 2 pages left. Oh. Man, my furnace is so loud. Hold on, I'm going to text my dad real quick. Oh, good, he texted me. Okay. My dad said, read, boy, read. Good. All right, back to the book. So Reepicheep just said, we're going to bind you till you come to your senses. Quite right, said Edmund, like they did with Ulysses when he wanted to go near the sirens. Caspian's hand had gone to his sword hilt when Lucy said, and you've almost promised Ramandu's daughter to go back. Caspian paused. Well, yes, there is that, he said. The girl. He stood irresolute for a moment, and then shouted out to the ship in general. We'll have your way, the quest is ended. We all return. Get the boat up again. Sire, said Reepicheep, we do not all return. As I explained before... Silence! Thundered Caspian. I've been lessoned, but I'll not be baited. Will no one silence that mouse? Your Majesty promised, said Reepicheep, to be a good lord to the talking beasts of Narnia. Talking beasts, yes, said Caspian. I said nothing about beasts that never stop talking. And he flung down the ladder in a temper and went into the cabin, slamming the door. His ego's getting in the way, man. He's angry. There's some magic here or something. But when the others rejoined him a little later, they found him changed. He was white, and there were tears in his eyes. It's no good, he said. I might as well have behaved decently for all the good I did with my temper and swagger. Aslan has spoken to me. No, I don't mean he was actually here. He wouldn't fit into the cabin, for one thing. But that gold lion's head on the wall came to life and spoke to me. It was terrible, his eyes. Not that he was at all rough with me, only a bit stern at first, but it was terrible all the same. And he said, oh, I can't bear it. The worst thing he could have said. You're to go on, Reep and Edmund and Lucy and Eustace, and I'm to go back. Alone. And at once. And what is the good of anything? Caspian, dear, said Lucy, you knew we'd have to go back to our world sooner or later. Yes, said Caspian with a sob, but this is sooner. You'll feel better when you get back to Ramandu's island, said Lucy. He cheered up a little later on, but it was a grievous parting on both sides, and I will not dwell on it. About 2 o'clock in the afternoon, well victualled and watered, although they thought they would need neither food nor drink, and with Reepicheep's coracle on board, the boat pulled away from the Dawn Treader to row through the endless carpet of lilies. The Dawn Treader flew all her flags and hung out her shields to honor their departure. Tall and big and homelike, she looked from their low position with the lilies all around them, and before she was out of sight, they saw her turn and begin rowing slowly westward. Yet though Lucy shed a few tears, she could not feel it as much as you might have expected. The light, the silence, the tingling smell of the silver sea, even in some odd way, the silence or the loneliness itself, were too exciting. Here they are, paddling their way. There was no need to row, for the current drifted them steadily to the east. None of them slept or ate. All that night and all the next day they glided eastward, and when the third day dawned with a brightness you or I could not bear even if we had dark glasses on, they saw a wonder ahead. It was as if a wall stood up between them and the sky, a greenish-gray, trembling, shimmering wall. Then up came the sun, and at its first rising they saw it through the wall, and it turned into wonderful rainbow colors. Then they knew that the wall was really a long, tall wave, a wave endlessly fixed in one place, as you may often see at the edge of a waterfall. It seemed to be about 30 feet high, and the current was gliding them swiftly toward it. You might have supposed that they would have thought of their danger. They didn't. I don't think anyone could have in their position. For now they saw something not only behind the wave, but behind the sun. They could not have seen even the sun if their eyes had not been strengthened by the water of the last sea. But now they could look at the rising sun and see it clearly and see things beyond it. What they saw, eastward beyond the sun, was a range of mountains. It was so high that either they never saw the top of it or they forgot it. None of them remembers seeing any sky in that direction. And the mountains must really have been outside of the world. For any mountains even a quarter of a 20th of that height ought to have had ice and snow on them. But these were warm and green and full of forests and waterfalls, however high you looked. And suddenly there came a breeze from the east, tossing the top of the wave into foamy shapes and ruffling the smooth water all around them. It lasted only a second or so, but what it brought them in that second none of these three children will ever forget. It brought both a smell and a sound, a musical sound. Edmund and Eustace would never talk about it afterward. Lucy could only say, "It would break your heart." "Why," said I, "was it so sad?" "Sad? No," said Lucy. I like that, Lucy having a conversation with C.S. Lewis. Oh, so good. No one in the boat doubted that they were seeing beyond the end of the world into Aslan's country. At that moment, with a crunch, the boat ran aground. The water was too shallow now for it. "This," said Reepicheep, "is where I go alone." They did not even try to stop him, for everything now felt as if it had been fated or had happened before. They helped him to lower his little coracle. Then he took off his sword. "I shall need it no more," he said, and flung it far away across the lilied sea. Excuse me. Got a sneeze. Where it fell, it stood upright with the hilt above the surface. Then he bade them goodbye, trying to be sad for their sakes, but he was quivering with happiness. Lucy, for the first and last time, did what she always wanted to do, taking him in her arms and caressing him. Then hastily he got into his coracle and took his paddle, and the current caught it, and away he went, very black against the lilies. I like that here at the end of the world. She finally scoops him up and cuddles him the way that she always wanted to. Hastily got into his coracle and took his paddle, and the current caught it, and away he went, very black against the lilies. But no lilies grew on the wave. It was a smooth green slope. The coracle went more and more quickly, and beautifully it rushed up the wave's side. For one split second they saw its shape and Reepicheep on the very top. Then it vanished. And since that moment, no one can truly claim to have seen Reepicheep the mouse. But my belief is that he came safe to Aslan's country and is alive there to this day. As the sun rose, the sight of those mountains outside the world faded away. The wave remained, but there was only blue sky behind it. The children got out of the boat and waded, not toward the wave, but southward, with the wall of water on their left. Thanks, Joyce, for blessing me when I sneezed. They could not have told you why they did this. It was their fate. And though they had felt, and been, very grown up on the Dawn Treader, they now felt just the opposite, and held hands as they waded through the lilies. They never felt tired. The water was warm, and all the time it got shallower. At last they were on dry sand, and then on grass, a huge plain of very fine short grass, almost level with the silver sea, and spreading in every direction without so much as a molehill. And of course, as it always does in a perfectly flat place without trees, it looked as if the sky came down to meet the grass in front of them. But as they went on, they got the strangest impression that here at last the sky really did come down and join the earth. A blue wall, very bright, but real and solid, more like glass than anything else. And soon they were quite sure of it. It was very near now. But between them and the foot of the sky there was something so white on the green grass that even with their eagle's eyes they could hardly look at it. They came on and saw that it was a lamb with a capital L. "Come and have breakfast," said the lamb in its sweet milky voice. Then they noticed for the first time that there was a fire lit on the grass and fish roasting on it. This makes me want to cry. They sat down and ate the fish, hungry now for the first time for many days, and it was the most delicious food they had ever tasted. This is great, what C.S. Lewis did here. So they come and they see a lamb, and the lamb has there for them a fire with fish roasting on it as they come in from the sea. This is like almost exactly what happens when Peter and Peter and James and John, I think, or I can't remember who it was, after Jesus is raised from the dead, they're fishing, and they come in, and Peter sees that it's the Lord, and he jumps into the water and he goes swimming for him, and Jesus is cooking fish there, and has bread with him. There's the lamb. Oh, it's so good. They sat down and ate the fish, hungry now for the first time in many days, and it was the most delicious food they had ever tasted. "Please, lamb," said Lucy, is this the way to Aslan's country?" "Not for you," said the lamb. "For you the door to Aslan's country is from your own world." Right, there's the lamb. Almost there, guys. "What?" said Edmund. "Is there a way into Aslan's country from our world too?" "There is a way into my country from all the worlds," said the lamb. But as he spoke, his snowy white flushed into tawny gold, and his size changed, and he was Aslan himself, towering above them and scattering light from his mane. "Oh, Aslan," said Lucy, "will you tell us how to get into your country from our world?" "I shall be telling you all the time," said Aslan, "but I will not tell you how long or short the way will be, only that it lies across a river. But do not fear that, for I am the great bridge builder. And now come, I will open the door in the sky and send you to your own land." "Please, Aslan," said Lucy, "before we go, will you tell us when we can come back to Narnia again? Please, and oh, do make it soon." "Dearest," said Aslan very gently, "you and your brother will never come back to Narnia." "Oh, Aslan," said Edmund and Lucy both together in despairing voices. "You are too old, children," said Aslan, "and you must begin to come close to your own world now." "It isn't Narnia, you know," sobbed Lucy. "It's you. We shan't meet you there. And how can we live never meeting you?" "But you shall meet me, dear one," said Aslan. Are you there too, sir?" said Edmund. "I am," said Aslan. But there I have another name. You must learn to know me by that name. This was the very reason why you were brought to Narnia, that by knowing me here for a little, you may know me better there." "And is Eustace never to come back here either?" said Lucy. "Child," said Aslan, "do you really need to know that? Come, I am opening the door in the sky." Then all in one moment there was a rending of the blue wall like a curtain being torn, and a terrible white light from beyond the sky, and the feel of Aslan's mane and the lion's kiss on their foreheads, and then the back bedroom in Aunt Alberta's home in Cambridge. Only two more things need to be told. One is that Caspian and his men all came safely back to Ramandu's island, and the three lords woke from their sleep. Caspian married Ramandu's daughter, and they all reached Narnia in the end, and she became a great queen and the mother and grandmother of great kings. The other is that back in our own world, everyone soon started saying how Eustace had improved, and how you'd never know him for the same boy. Everyone except Aunt Alberta, who said he had become very commonplace and tiresome, and it must have been the influence of those Pevensey children. The end. That concludes The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. There are so many allusions to Jesus and the end of his narrative in the Gospels, and at the very end of this chapter. It's so cool. The lamb, the fish, the water, the rending, the tearing of a curtain. So many good things. C.S. Lewis was a brilliant, brilliant man. You do know me in that land. Yes, you do. In many and various ways, God spoke to us spoke to his people of old by the prophets, but now in these times he has spoken to us by his Son. So through the gift of story, the gift of fantasy, C.S. Lewis is teaching this truth, that Christ is here, and you know him, because he has shown himself to you. Thank you guys so much for doing this with me, for joining me for this story. I love you guys. I'm really happy that we got through the Dawn Treader, and it's because it's such a good story. I can't believe how much of Narnia we have read, and yeah, love you guys. Till next time, till Sunday, till tomorrow morning with Pastor Wade. Also pray for Melissa, because she has surgery tomorrow, and my parents have to go to bed now so that they can come watch our children. Till tomorrow, do not be afraid. Be at peace. Love you guys.